This meeting is now being recorded. So welcome. As I said, I'm Chloe Shields. I'm a Senior Associate for Partnerships here with the Global Alliance for Clean Cook Stoves. And we're pleased to have you join this webinar today on the Empowered Entrepreneur Training Handbook. And this webinar is designed for new as well as existing Alliance partners, and is part of a series that we're doing that not only features a specific tool or resource for our partners like the handbook, but also provides a brief introduction for those newer partners to the Alliance, how we work, what the various benefits of partnership with the Alliance are, and highlights a few upcoming opportunities for our partners. So I'll provide this brief introduction, and then we'll hand it over to the authors of the resource guide for a more detailed presentation. So for those new to the Alliance, our aim is to create a thriving global market for clean cook stoves and fuels. And this is really in response to this persistent problem of which you're all aware as you're working in this field that impacts still 3 billion people reliant on solid fuels for their daily cooking and heating needs. As we know, this results in numerous impacts on human health, on the environment and the climate, on local economies and livelihoods, and particularly on women and girls. In response to this challenge, the Alliance was launched in 2010 by a number of founding partners with a mission to save lives, improve livelihoods, empower women, and protect the environment. And to do that, we set a goal for ourselves of reaching 100 million households with clean and efficient cook stoves and fuels by the year 2020. Through a consultative process with many experts across the sector shortly after our launch, and really building upon the lessons learned by our various partners over the many decades of their work in this field, we determined that a market-based approach was the best way to reach our 100 million target. And this approach is based on 3 core strategies: strengthening supply, enhancing demand, and enabling markets. And this approach really drives all of the work that we do at the Alliance, whether it's on the supply side, our efforts to support innovative new technologies through our Pilot Innovation Fund, or the number of different mechanisms that we have to build the capacity of clean cooking enterprises, or our work to generate demand for clean cook stoves and fuels, which is really kicking into gear this year and in the coming couple of years to ensure consumer awareness of the impacts and benefits of these technologies, ensure they're accessible and affordable through appropriate consumer finance, or many of our efforts that are in the market enabling space, like our work to drive international standards development to demonstrate the various benefits of these different technologies. So the Empowered Entrepreneur Handbook that is featured today is just one example of how the Alliance is working to both strengthen supply and generate demand, and to enable our partners to do so locally by providing tools to support women energy entrepreneurs working across the clean cooking value chain. The Alliance is led by a Secretariat based in Washington, D.C., where we coordinate our global activities, but we also have market managers present in our 8 focus countries, which you'll see on this slide here, where we really go deep with targeted support for clean cooking and provide a physical resource for our locally based partners in those countries or regions. But beyond the Alliance Secretariat, we really depend on our partners to support and advance clean cooking efforts around the world. That network has now grown to over 1,200 some organizations. As you'll see from the slide here, we work with all different types of organizations from the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. And this list is by no means exhaustive. In fact, we have a very detailed online partner directory, the link of which is provided on the screen here, that we really encourage our partners to check out to see what other partner organizations are doing to create connections with perhaps a clean fuel supplier in the same market in which you're working, or to find organizations that have a specific expertise that could complement the work that you do, and to contact them and make those connections directly. So really encourage you to use that partner directory resource. I also wanted to go through just a few of the benefits of being an alliance partner to ensure that you are aware and can take advantage of some of these opportunities. And really the short answer is that becoming a partner is the best way to stay informed of alliance activities both globally and in the various countries in which we work. But more specifically in terms of resources and capacity development, alliance partners are uniquely eligible for all of our funding opportunities, whether that's our Spark Fund to really scale clean cooking enterprises, or that could be a travel scholarship to participate in the upcoming Clean Cooking Forum to be held in Ghana. Partners receive invitations to in-person workshops and events, as well as webinars like this one. They get a first look at our toolkits, reports, and other resources, and are automatically subscribed to our monthly newsletter. In terms of partnership brokering and networking, I already referenced our online directory, which is a great resource to make connections with other organizations. And oftentimes, the Alliance will introduce partners to a donor, or if we see a particular synergy with the work of another partner and organization, we'll facilitate that introduction. We connect partners with media contacts, and provide a number of other visibility-enhancing opportunities for our partners, whether it's the Partner Spotlight in our monthly newsletter or promotion across our social media channels like Facebook and Twitter. So lastly, I just wanted to share a few new resources and upcoming opportunities for our partners. Firstly, we just released the second edition of a catalog of carbon offset projects and advisory service providers, which is a resource that includes a number of alliance partners who have carbon credits from cook stoves for sale, but is also a tool for corporations, NGOs, or public sector institutions looking to purchase these credits. In terms of its applicability to implementing partners, likely some of those of you on the phone today, it includes advisory service providers who can support organizations such as yours looking to obtain carbon credits from their existing cook stove projects. And I just want to note that this resource is available on our carbon finance portal, which is carbonfinanceforcookstoves.org, which is a really strong resource that has a number of other features, including a carbon project database and map. So if you haven't checked out the Carbon Finance portal already, I encourage you to do so, both for this and other resources. Second, the Safe Access to Fuel and Energy Steering Committee is coordinating the humanitarian response on energy access in Nepal post the Nepalese earthquake. So if you're interested in learning more about how to get involved or what the response is in the energy access space, I encourage you to check that out at safefuelandenergy.org. You'll find a detailed activity map and listings, a number of energy response resources like needs assessments or meeting minutes from these various coordination calls that the SAFE Steering Committee has had, as well as links to donate to efforts. So check that out. The Alliance has a number of major meetings and reports coming up. I referenced our Clean Cooking Forum. We'll be celebrating our 5th year anniversary in the fall. And so we're looking for high quality photographs that we could use to help tell the clean cooking story. So if you would like to feature some photographs of the work of your organization, we would love to use those images. So please send them over to partnerships@cleancookstoves.org. We're looking for high resolution images, and please include any applicable photo credits. And lastly, the Clean Cooking Forum is a biennial event held by the Alliance. It's a conference in which we expect about 400 participants from around the world working in the clean cook stoves and fuels space to share experiences, to network. We'll have some high-level speakers, and that will be November 10th through 13th in Accra, Ghana. We have a specific website for that event, cleancooking2015.org, that you can check out. Registration will likely open in early August, and we expect a lot of demand for that 400-person event. So be sure to keep tabs on that website if you're interested in participating. So now for today's featured resource, the Empowered Entrepreneur Training Handbook. We have multiple different speakers that will be presenting on the handbook and how it's currently being used by some Alliance partners today. First will be my colleague Rachel Mahmood, the Gender Associate here at the Global Alliance, will provide a brief introduction, and then we'll hand it over to the lead authors of the handbook, Dr. Anita Shankar, researcher at Johns Hopkins University, and Genevieve Smith, the director of the Visionaria network. And we'll also hear from Jessica Alderman, the Communications and Public Relations Director at Envirofit, will provide a case study on how the handbook has been used by an Alliance partner. So I will now hand it over to Rachel.
Thanks, Chloe, for that great overview. Good morning, everyone. Good evening. My name is Rachel Mahmood, and I'm the Gender Associate at the Global Alliance for Clean Cook Stoves. And as part of the Gender Programs team, I'm responsible for ensuring that gender is mainstream throughout Alliance programs. So as Chloe mentioned, the Empowered Entrepreneur Training Handbook is the highlight of today's webinar. And it's a tool that was recently developed as part of the Alliance's strategy to scale effective approaches for increasing the role of women in the value chain, as well as to increase the social and economic benefits of clean cook stoves and fuels for women and girls. One of the main pillars of the Alliance's gender strategy is to build the capacity of our partners to ensure that they're using gender-informed approaches. And the handbook is also a key resource for partners who are trying to strengthen the role of women throughout the value chain. The handbook is a little bit different from some of the other trainings you may have seen, not only because it includes specific empowerment and leadership components, but it also looks at business skills with a gender perspective and addresses the different challenges that men and women face in running a successful business. The empowerment and leadership training is actually significant for women entrepreneurs because women frequently lack access to formal education and training. So this training tries to address that gap by offering a curriculum that is accessible to any player in the sector and also addresses the constraints and gaps that women consistently face in business operations. Over the past year, the handbook has been tested in a number of contexts, which Anita Shankar and Genevieve Smith will go into more detail about later in the presentation. But to date, it has been tested in Kenya, Bolivia, Nigeria, Ghana, and Haiti. And in Ghana, we actually tested components of the handbook with girls and young women from the ages of 15 to 25 through an after-school program with the Girl Guides. In Haiti, we hosted a 5-day training of trainers workshop that 5 Haitian partners attended to build the capacity of local implementers to help enhance women's participation in the clean cooking value chain. And following this training of trainers, the idea is that partner organizations will facilitate their own training for women entrepreneurs within their existing sales networks. So the workshop that we had in Haiti gave each organization an opportunity to develop a concrete plan of action for implementation using the guidelines in the handbook. Moving forward, the Alliance has planned a number of trainings with partners and grantees. For example, one of the Alliance partners, Energia, which is the International Network of Gender and Sustainable Energy, is actually planning to host their own training of trainers with its grantees who are each working with women energy entrepreneurs. Winrock and USAID are also interested in supporting a training of trainers in Kenya this year, and they wanted us to announce that if there's any groups that would be interested in sending trainers to their program, they should contact us after the webinar. So my email address will actually be available at the end of this webinar. Also, the Alliance just awarded a new round of 5 grantees for the Women's Empowerment Fund. And 2 of those grantees will be specifically testing the handbook in their business model, and all of the other grantees will be incorporating elements of the handbook into their proposed training programs. And finally, we have a training program in Bangladesh that will be rolling out through the Village Education Resource Center, which has already translated the handbook into Bangla, and they'll be training a group of women sales agents later this year. So the Alliance encourages all of its partners to make use of this resource to enhance existing training programs, which would ultimately fill key gaps in women's economic empowerment. Anita and Genevieve are going to go into more detail about how we measure the impact of this training for enhancing women's empowerment and leadership, as well as how it's only one solution for scaling the sector, but we've seen great success and measurable results to date. So we're pretty excited to share this resource with you, and we hope you'll consider using it throughout your programs to advance women's economic empowerment. After the webinar, if anyone would like to follow up with the Alliance about using the handbook, you can contact me directly. Like I said, my email will be listed at the end. And now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Anita Shankar from Johns Hopkins University, who, like Chloe mentioned, is one of the lead authors of the handbook.
Thanks, Rachel, and thanks, Chloe, for that really nice introduction. So as Rachel had mentioned, we want to use this webinar to introduce you to the handbook, to not only give you an overview of the content, why the handbook was developed, but also the research and evidence base behind the work and how you can use this handbook most effectively when you work with your entrepreneurs and sales agents. Genevieve and I will be describing in some detail the specific content of the handbook, and Jessica from Envirofit will provide her experience as a practitioner and why Envirofit has included this type of empowerment training as an important component of their overall strategy. We'll cover the core competencies that we expect that this curriculum addresses, and then take a deeper dive into the actual content related to the business empowerment and leadership training. We also want to explain to you what we mean by the human-centered design plan and how you as an organization can use this process to create a culturally specific and relevant training for your particular context. And that'll be important because the handbook has been designed with a lot of content, but we recognize that there's variability in where everyone's kind of starting and where their sales agents, their experience is coming from. So that human-centered design piece is really to allow you to be able to pick out which components of the training are most applicable to the members in your group. Now I'm going to switch to the next slide. Let's see. Yes, okay. So the handbook was designed for organizations that are currently working with or plan to work with women entrepreneurs or sales agents. We have content that are 6 full days of training curricula, and it's been organized as 2 days of business training, 2 days of empowerment training, and 2 days of leadership training. As I mentioned before, we understand that organizations are at different levels of knowledge and skill with respect to training, and that's why we have a human-centered design process, which we'll go into in a little bit more detail later. But just to reemphasize that process helps each organization tailor the content and structure of the training to be most effective. Our ultimate goal, as Rachel was mentioning, is that for this handbook is to support organizations to more effectively engage and train women in their value chain. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over now to Genevieve, who will give you a brief description of the background of how the handbook was developed.
Great. Thank you, Anita. Thank you, everyone, for joining this webinar today as well. To give some background on why the handbook was developed. The Global Alliance for Clean Cookstoves has long recognized the contributions that women make in achieving the clean cooking sector's health, environmental, women's empowerment, and livelihood goals. And without engaging women throughout the value chain, it is likely that global efforts will be less effective and scale less rapidly. This handbook is the Alliance's overall gender and empowerment strategies, Rachel mentioned, to better leverage women's ability to impact adoption rates of clean cooking solutions. In 2013, the Alliance released a resource called Adoption of Clean Cooking Solutions in Women's Empowerment. And this guidance for variety of sector stakeholders, it helps increase the understanding of why women are critical to adoption of cooked stoves and fuels, and how to ensure they're included throughout the value chain. This Empowered Entrepreneur Training Handbook builds off of one of the universal best practices that's outlined in the resource guide, which is to provide initial and ongoing training, including empowerment, leadership, and business and technical skills to women in the value chain. It is also based on some recent Alliance research that Anita will delve into shortly in this webinar. The handbook was developed under the lead of the Visionaria Network and Johns Hopkins University. As you can see, input was provided by a variety of sources, including human-centered design principles and concepts from IDEO's Human-Centered Design Toolkit and with input from IDEO.org. It also draws from empowerment methodology developed by Gershon Gelsraub from the Empowerment Institute, as well as experiences in existing material from the Visionaria Network, International, which led to development of the business section of the handbook. Exercises from Educate and other resources integrated pieces of the curriculum and adapted. It was also important theory. Finally, as Rachel mentioned earlier in the call, there were tests and in-field assessments, which included participant and partner feedback that helped inform the development of the handbook. This material was tested before it was finalized by the Visionaria Network in Peru and Cedesol in Bolivia, as well as a full testing of the material conducted by GIZ in Peru, which helped to improve the material. There are three components of the handbook. The first is the Human-Centered Design Plan, which Anita talked about briefly in the beginning of the call. To give a short overview of this before we delve into it deeply later in the call, this is a qualitative process to allow training organizers and implementers to prepare a thoughtful, customized training using human-centered design principles. Human-centered design, for those who aren't familiar, is about putting people at the center of design in which their needs, dreams, and behaviors are examined. The Human-Centered Design Plan allows trainers and implementing organizations to reflect on the purpose of the training, the needs and backgrounds of the participants, and prepare for the training in order to achieve desired goals. It also encourages adaptation and personalization of different pieces of the curriculum. The final outcome of the HCD Human-Centered Design process is a customized training plan for participants. As I mentioned, Anita will be discussing the different steps of the HCD plan later on in this webinar. The second part is the actual Empowered Entrepreneur Training Handbook, and this includes the curriculum material. The curriculum is comprised of about 50 hours of lesson plans for 2 days of business, 2 days of empowerment, and 2 days of leadership training lesson plans. Finally, the third part is the participant packet, and this includes activities and evaluation forms to go along with your training. I'll now pass it back to Anita to discuss some background on agency-based empowerment and leadership and why including this as an important component of the handbook.
Hi. Okay, great. So I think it would be useful to explain a little bit more about what we mean by agency-based empowerment. So I'm going to give a little bit more of a definition of that. There are many different definitions of empowerment in general, but I want to call your attention to an important distinction. Empowerment can be divided into two components. One would be resources, and the second would be agency. So resources refer to those external inputs that help individuals improve their lives. This could include providing education, skill building, opportunity, financing. In fact, if you look closely at most empowerment programs, you'll find that most of those focus on these resource-based activities. So in contrast, agency refers to those internal factors that help create change. This can include include one's belief in themselves, their motivation, their desire to make a change, their self-esteem, etc. While many empowerment programs provide resources with the hope that internal agency will also improve, in many cases that's true. However, what we have found that in the case of challenging new activities, such as starting and maintaining a new business, requires a more focused effort on building individual agency. So the agency-based empowerment training that we have outlined in this handbook is designed to help individuals understand their own thought process and belief systems to help them create and focus on the goals that are most important to them. Once individuals have become clearer on what they want, the leadership skills section of this handbook is focused on helping individuals realize these goals. So the agency-based empowerment exercises help individuals to find their voice and realize their power, and the leadership exercises help individuals take their goals and make them into a reality. The work on the agency-based empowerment training has come from the recognition that within a lot of different development programs, despite being provided with a lot of information and skills, that wasn't enough to spur individuals into action. So this greater awareness of the problem may be useful, but we really needed to create a bigger spark for behavior change. And as Genevieve had mentioned before, this is even more difficult when it comes to women who are generally more disempowered than men in most societies. From the literature related to female entrepreneurs globally, it's clear that women are more afraid of failure, they're more hesitant to take risks, and they're less willing or able to take decisions related to important situations. Even when women are given the opportunity to provide their opinion or take action, women are still less likely than men to do so. It seemed that what was stopping individuals was their mindset. It was how they were thinking about their situation and their beliefs about what could be done to improve it. So in my research, I began looking for interventions that actually focused on building individual agency, or in other words, building one's own personal power. So in 2010, I learned about the work of the Empowerment Institute in New York that had developed a U.S.-based training program around behavior change. After learning this process and working in collaboration with NGOs in Kenya and India, we began testing this process to see how it could be culturally adapted and modified for developing country context. So in 2012, we carried out a series of pilot research studies to examine the impact of this modified empowerment curricula in the context of disenfranchised populations, both in Kenya and India. And the early work showed significant impacts on overall well-being of these women, improved economic conditions, enhanced relationships, and improved agency. Given the results of these data, we felt quite confident that this type of training could be beneficial to women entrepreneurs within the clean energy sector, and with the support of the Alliance, conducted the first randomized controlled trial in Kenya with cook stove entrepreneurs. This was done in conjunction with FVAC Kenya and Envirofit International. What we found in this study is that the agency-based empowerment training led to a doubling of business capacity, and individuals who got this training were nearly 3 times more likely to become high sellers of clean cook stoves. Also, women becoming sales agents and entrepreneurs, we did find that if a woman sold to other women, the level of adoption and their awareness of the benefits of having the clean cook stove were much greater than if they had purchased the cook stove from a man. So that really started building the evidence of the importance of including women as much as possible along the clean energy value chain. So in addition to the randomized controlled trial, the Alliance supported 2 additional studies to explore how to best support female entrepreneurs. And what we realized is despite the additional sales capacity that resulted from the agency-based training, sales were still not as strong as what we had hoped, and therefore we expanded the research to include leadership training and also recognized the need for gender-specific business training. Since Jessica has been part of the original research in Kenya and has explored this empowerment training, I'd like to turn it over to her to explain a little bit more about their experience for this work. Go ahead, Jessica.
Thanks, Nita. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of background about Envirofit's work with this. Are you hearing me here? Maybe, hopefully. Just to give you a little bit of background, so in terms of Envirofit's work with women's empowerment, so women have always been an important part of Envirofit's research and development in terms of Envirofit's products and as well as our manufacturing and supply chain. So like our factory in Honduras, we're employing more than 60% women. But we really wanted to hone in on the entrepreneurial side because in 2012 we noticed that, despite the fact that most of our customers were women, the majority of the sales agents were men because that was just a natural flow for men in the areas that we worked took on more of the entrepreneurial role. So we wanted to look at how we involve more women in this process and what would be the result. So we essentially needed to make the business case to be able to invest in women and go down this path as a part of our value chain. So that's kind of how we got started. We got a grant from the Global Alliance to be able to test this agency-based training program, and this is something I wanted to note. We did this training before the handbook came out, so this helped to develop the handbook, but what the training that we had delivered in Kenya and Nigeria is different than what is in the handbook. We only did the agency side part of the program, and that helped to contribute to the handbook, but it was only part of it. So noting that, we worked with Johns Hopkins, as Anita had said, and the Empowerment Institute to pilot test this effect of a 4-day agency-based cook stove training. So as I said, our training only had the agency components of the handbook. We did a randomized controlled trial in Kenya, and we found out that, women were able to sell 3 times as many stoves as those who didn't undergo the empowerment training. And more importantly, the cook stove users who purchased a stove from an empowered woman were more likely to be using the stove correctly and more frequently. So this helped really expand our focus and kind of decide that we wanted to invest more in this. So the key takeaways we got from this first study were that, it was worth to go down this path in our business model to invest in women in distribution and pay more attention to how we're involving women across our supply chain. But it also left us with this question of, how do we make this a scalable model, and how do we make this a sustainable approach, or how do we, there's different women's groups. Envirofit works with a whole bunch of different types of women's groups, so how do we make this a sustainable model? So that's one of the things that we were trying to look at when we did our second program in Nigeria. So we worked with a group in Rivers and Akwibom states, and this program actually faced a lot of challenges because we had there's a lot of political violence in the last couple of months that has prevented us from implementing the program as we would wish. So we're still in the process of collecting data for the program. But this time we actually did something slightly different where we set up a group-based model after the training. So the women are trained, and then the women were then placed into groups. These were groups that were not formed before the training. So we formed the groups, and they met on a weekly basis afterwards to help support each other. But we learned a lot from this training as well, although, like I said, these are not conclusive yet. We're still running through the data. What we found is that women requested that they wanted more business and skills-based training. So that helped kind of inform our decision to say, okay, yes, the agency training is good, but we absolutely need to include that business skills training. Also, people said that the empowerment training was helpful, but they needed to have that balance. And another thing that we think we found is that the group strength had an effect on overall sales, but this is something that we're still looking into. So the fact that if the group had a strong leader, then that entire group did better in terms of sales, as opposed to If the group didn't have as much strong leadership, then that group, the whole group was affected in terms of sales. So that's something that we're looking at, in evaluating the data, but that's something that we think that we're going to find. Another thing that we're looking at is, in terms of the sustainability, is the cost of doing that training. So part of it being sustainable is how expensive it is to actually conduct one training and how many people you can train, which we're still trying to reduce that cost to make it more sustainable. So in terms of our scale-up plan for how we want to continue this work, Envirofit has since then invested in a part-time resource to help us invest in women's empowerment and try to expand this program. We're absolutely looking to be a part of the program that Winrock is putting together to help bring this program to others. And we're really looking at cost-effective ways to conduct this training to be able to scale this up in Kenya, as well as our other partners, to encourage them to employ women in their businesses. That's about it for me.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. So for those of you who are considering taking on this training, probably the most important consideration is whether you feel that this training will fill a critical need for your organization and for your work. Moreover, also, I want to emphasize that although this handbook was designed to work with women, the content is certainly applicable to men as well. As you consider using this handbook, it's important to assess what you really already have in terms of a system of training in place. It will be important that you have experienced trainers because as they're going through this material, they're going to need to be able to understand it, have a good sense of what the needs are of the entrepreneurs and sales agents that they're working with, and have a reasonable toolbox of how to engage groups and do the trainings. One of the key aspects of this work requires that there's the adaptation of the material to the local context. And so that's why that'll be important. In addition, you'll need to have a core group of entrepreneurs or sales agents or people that you want to work with to train. It is also, I think, useful to review the content of the handbook to see, in fact, if components of these trainings would be useful or relevant to other members of your team as well, so others within the value chain, which we believe it would be. In addition, as Jessica was mentioning, it is important that you understand what would be required as you take this on as a training, and that you would need sufficient facilities to conduct the training, which include resources, rooms to conduct the training, transportation, etc. While this training can be done by having people come to the training venue daily, we have found actually that if people have the opportunity to work together and stay together in a residential setting, at least for part of the training, we found that that's actually been very effective in kind of catapulting people to a different level of competencies. So I want to talk a little bit about how this training was developed, and it was really developed to build on specific core competencies of the individuals in your program. Now, I want to point out this particular diagram, which really illustrates the core competencies that we're focusing on. At the center of this work, we're trying to build personal power. This includes learning to manage oneself, use one's own voice, to be reflective and aware of our thoughts. Personal power provides the inner strength to build the other core competencies. So moving from personal power, we focus on two critical pillars of entrepreneurship. That's relationship building and planning. So within relationship building, we're focused on building positive relations with others, providing strong customer service, and improve our ability to make the case to our potential clients of the importance of adopting clean energy technology. In addition, a business needs planning and strategic thinking in order to succeed. This includes goal setting and knowing how to look for sources of information and to plan systematically. What we found in our review of many programs is women entrepreneurs often don't have the basic planning skills to think about the future of their business. So building core competencies in these areas are critical for creating and maintaining business activities and helps reinforce all other aspects of women's empowerment. Ultimately, and that's felt that kind of the top part of our triangle, we're trying to build competencies in achievement and realization of goals. So in this case, we want to stress that this goes beyond just business goals. We want these individuals to become better at achieving their life goals. And so as Jessica was mentioning, it's important that people get the skills to empower themselves and that they feel better and they feel more hopeful. But unless they have the wherewithal to actually create action, to actually reach the goals that they want to, it'll be challenging. And I also want to emphasize that as we're supporting achievement, it also requires an understanding of risk because we must acknowledge that we will fail. And the key is to understand how we can learn from failing and how that can be improved and tried again. So we want to support individuals to continue to persevere despite the challenges, and this requires improving our problem-solving skills. For each exercise in the handbook, we're referring back to these core competencies that we're building so that trainers can identify gaps in the skill set and help each other kind of build the competencies that are most important to them. So I'm going to turn this over now to Genevieve, who is going to talk in more detail about the specific pieces.
Great, thanks, Anita. So the handbook has several activities to set the stage for a community environment that promotes continuous growth for the entrepreneurs and introduces basic key concepts. These activities include the introduction as well as community agreements. So the community agreements exercise, within this, the trainees co-design the training rules and agreements as a group, but all participants take ownership of their learning in the space. This encourages buy-in and commitment to the training process. There's also a core competencies and risk-taking exercise. As Anita mentioned, risk-taking is one of the core competencies and is critical to being an entrepreneur. Understanding how and why to take risks is especially important to women who are often risk-averse. Risk-taking needs to be calculated, well-planned, and well thought out. This is a skill that can be learned and improved. So something that this activity aims to support the development of. In addition, there are activities related to sex and gender. It's important for participants to understand the difference between sex and gender, and by exploring biological differences, sex versus social differences in relations, gender, can understand that gender norms and roles change by culture and location. So it's important to understand that men and women face different opportunities and constraints in their lives and businesses. Sometimes these constraints are gender-related and not necessarily set in stone. So this is something that those activities kind of aim to discuss with you. Several questions for discussion here, but due to the limited time on the webinar and wanting to leave portions, I'm going to skip over the discussion of the handbook. In the business section, the building skills component, participants will have the ability to write and implement a business plan by going through 4 basic pieces of a business plan, which are marketing, costing and pricing, building initial plan, and management. Additional exercises in the business section include customer care and relationship building, record keeping, business models, and establishing a for your business. I would like to note that the business section is quite dense and difficult to get through in 2 days of training. Therefore, it's important to plan accordingly for this. And there are a variety of optional exercises that will need to be examined before the training, and the trainer must decide whether or not to do that. Something for humans are not over shortly. As the implementing organization, you may also want to review the lesson plans and inform the trainer if there are some that you would like to be conducted. The optional exercises that supplement the business core training could also be done in workshops after the initial training is conducted if that's of interest. The business commitment might take 3 days to implement, depending on the level of the entrepreneurs and prior business training and knowledge, as well as whether or not the optional exercises are conducted. So I'd just like to show an example of one of the business activities, and this is one on customer care. So this activity on customer care explains to participants what customer care is and why it's important. This owner focuses on satisfying customers' needs and wants, and selling a product requires developing and maintaining relationships. So treating customers well is important because customers who like them and their products can promote it by word of mouth to neighbors and friends, which is a form of remarketing effective and basic pyramid communities. Within this, participants first read a case study and have a guided discussion, and then they brainstorm do's and don'ts for customer care before good practices, and summary points are shared by the trainer. An optional additional exercise within this activity is related to customer service willpower. Participants are given 2 different scenarios and are told in each of those scenarios. So the template for this is found in the participant packet as an optional exercise. So while the business training does provide a good foundation for business and for creating a business plan, connecting participants with business mentors will be important as well as they formulate, implement, and adapt their business plans and business activities. A mentor can provide tailored business and technical advice, help set and meet targets, and promote knowledge sharing and cooperation. Something that we encourage organizations to provide to their entrepreneurs and sales aides if it's within the boundaries of their resources. Next, I'm going to pass it back to Anita to discuss the empowerment section of the handbook.
Okay, and I think within this training, actually, the unique aspect lies in the focus on personal empowerment. So, as such, the exercises and concepts may also be the most challenging to understand and learn to convey to others. These exercises are designed to help participants think about who they are, what they believe, and what their hopes and dreams are. So there are actually no new skills being taught in this section. The section is focused on allowing individuals to focus on themselves, and the exercises allow the individuals to look carefully at their lives, how it is now, and what they want in their future. The processes that are learned in this section will give your participants the tools to reflect on their thoughts and actions, to examine where it is that they want to be, and kind of a process to learn how to grow, both as individuals and as business owners. We actually start with an exercise that helps us accept ourselves for who we are and to see ourselves as our own greatest ally and greatest friend. This is particularly important for women, to acknowledge ourselves and our strength and appreciate ourselves for who we are, because oftentimes that sociocultural context does not necessarily promote that. There's another exercise later in the section called My Best Qualities. Again, this is a place where individuals can get positive reinforcement to help them recognize the important aspects of their lives. What we found, especially in disenfranchised populations, individuals are really never given the opportunity to reflect on themselves in a positive way. And women especially, as I mentioned, often are kind of conditioned to think less of themselves or of their self-worth. So the Tree of Life exercise, you'll see in the manual, we understand our lives are influenced by many different factors, by many different people and different situations. All of these experiences have created that person as they are today. It's how they've shaped how they think about themselves and the world around them. So these aspects of our lives kind of create our story up to now, our kind of narrative. So with this work, we hope to have participants begin thinking about what the future could look like, kind of how the new narrative, the new chapter in their life can be, and how they can be more actively engaged in making their life in the way that they want. In this section, we introduce a number of different terms to help understand how thoughts influence behavior. We have individuals explore exactly what they believe in themselves and their future. What we find is that some of these beliefs are helpful and move us toward strength and toward our goals, but there's a whole another set of beliefs that get in our way and make it harder to reach our goals. So one of the concepts that we introduce is this concept of limiting beliefs. These are beliefs that kind of stop us from moving forward. So if we wanted to have a successful business, in our mind we say, as a woman, oh, this is a man's world, or I'll always make mistakes. I'm not confident in my abilities. These beliefs can do a lot to stop a person from trying something new. These limiting beliefs also protect individuals from risk. So we have to be able to balance and look at it carefully. These exercises help us reflect upon our belief systems and figure out how we can use the power of thought to change our thoughts so that they're more aligned with our visions. As mentioned, the beliefs have an important role in guiding our actions, and we go through a section of core beliefs that are important to consider. These beliefs can really help strengthen oneself and build our inner power. So in the core beliefs exercise, we focus on 6 beliefs that help support a stronger self. For example, believing in our own self-worth or self-esteem is important. Without accepting ourselves as valuable, makes it difficult to trust ourselves to take important decisions or try new things. Another example would be positive attitude. And this doesn't necessarily mean, to only be looking at the positive things in life, but really to be able to look at challenges as opportunities and not get distracted by negative thoughts. The other core piece of the empowerment section is learning a simple process to help manage our thoughts and get them in line with our goals. So these are a series of 4 or 5 questions, actually, that help guide us toward positive behavior change. It begins with the first question of awareness about what is the current situation or what is the specific challenge I face. Then the person is guided toward their vision, where it is that they want to go around this specific situation. And that the third part is a transformation piece. So how do I need to change my thinking around this issue in order to get where I want to go? And then the fourth piece is around what is my next growth step. And actually a really important process after they've kind of gone through this thinking process is after they've decided what the growth is, that see whether action has been taken and then get feedback to assess whether what they decided to do is leading them toward their goals. And then that feedback becomes very, very important in terms of being able to assess the success of that process. The idea is to be able to develop and strengthen a positive mental thinking pattern. The last 2 exercises in the empowerment section are designed to address specific challenges that are faced by women. One is their fear of taking risks and also the importance of taking care of their health. In the last exercise called the body dialogue, it can be very interesting because it allows women to remember how it was to feel healthy and strong when they were younger, and it also reminds them to take care of themselves so that they can continue to do all the activities that they want for their families and their business. The body dialogue exercise also allows an opportunity for individuals to discuss health impacts of our environment and specifically the role of indoor air pollution on health. I'm just going to also give you a quick snapshot of one of the exercises from the empowerment section that's focused on limiting beliefs. I don't know if you can see it much on this page, but you can tell on the left we've got the core competency again to let people know what the training was around. So I'm going to hand this over to Genevieve as we are getting close on time. So go ahead, Genevieve.
So in the leadership section, which is the third and final section of the handbook, participants put into action the understandings they build in the empowerment section, the skills they develop in the business section through concrete steps and personal tools. In the leadership section, what a leader is and how to be a better one is explored. This section also delves into making visions for oneself and one's work and setting goals to accomplish them through educating participants on a framework called the SMART framework for defining and achieving goals. There are practice activities on abilities to be proactive and respond to situations. So being proactive is about taking responsibility for ourselves, actions, and our future, whereas reactive responses are guided by feelings. And so this is an activity that reflects on that and how to be proactive in your life and business. The section also explores strategies around problem solving and delves into active listening and communication to others as this is an important component for working with customers. All these activities and processes involving exploring oneself and enhancing one's ability to be better leaders and develop strong, successful businesses. At the end of the leadership section, participants create an action plan, and this is a plan for setting and achieving next goals. It can be applied to personal or business goals, and in the participant packet, it's focused on what's the next action plan for what I want to achieve for my business. I'll jump to a quick sample activity on problem solving. Being able to problem solve and overcome challenges is important for an ability for an entrepreneur, as problem solving is the ability to identify and solve problems or challenges is centered around taking personal actions to solve challenges, resolve conflict, and discuss alternatives. So in this activity in particular, there are 5 stages of problem solving that participants can use when they cover challenges more like the lesson includes brainstorming activities, tips, and a more advanced option of using storyboards to identify challenges, generate ideas, and prioritize. I'm going to hand it back to Annette over to our design plan.
Okay, thanks, Genevieve. So I'm going to quickly go through the HCD section since I know we're kind of at the end of our hour. So the HCD section is comprised of 3 different components. It is in the H, which is here, C, which is create, and D, which is deliver. In order to do the human-centered design plan, you do require a full understanding of the contents of the handbook. And it's a qualitative process that has to be done as a group in conjunction with the primary stakeholders in the organization. That should include the key trainers, decision makers, and individuals who are familiar with the community being served. As I mentioned, the first section is around here. This section helps us better understand the needs, the barriers, and constraints faced by your trainers. It also allows the trainers to understand what type of mindset they need to be in to best conduct the training. And so we want to ensure that the trainers realize that this is a very individual process, that this training is going to be an individual process, and they have to serve as guides to help provide space in order for people to understand and use these concepts. It's also very important that the trainers themselves understand and use the principles in the training themselves, because if you don't really use it, it's difficult to be able to train others. The create section is actually designed to help trainers in this core group figure out which exercises would best serve your participants and how also best to engage your participants, especially for conveying more challenging ideas. So in this section of the HCD planning, the trainers explore the best tools to use in the training exercises to keep the participants engaged and interested in the training. The deliver piece is focused on the actual delivery of the training. Again, this is based on being able to do some get some feedback after a training has been done in order to understand what worked and hasn't worked in this process. So in order to make this training the most effective, you'll need to ensure that there are clear systems to be able to get feedback on your successes, on your trainings, and also that the individuals, as Genevieve had alluded to and Jessica as well, before, that there are systems of ongoing support so that these women aren't they participate in the training but then are kind of left alone after that. They need to have a constant reinforcement of these ideas in order to get the success that they need. So now I'm going to go ahead and leave it open to any questions if we have time, or for Rachel and Chloe to add any more from this.
We do have time for some questions, so if you can go ahead and type any questions into that chat window in the bottom left-hand corner, our presenters will answer them.
Also, I want to mention that while we have a lot of content within the handbook, as Genevieve said, it's over 50 hours of content, there are many different ways to implement that training to suit the needs of the entrepreneurs that you work with, so that it could be done in 6 days, it could be done over the course of time, maybe 3 days and 3 days, or over the weekends, depending on your organization's needs. But also, you could take it into smaller chunks. As long as the key is that you have systems in place that allow the continued learning and connecting of things that have been learned before with subsequent trainings.
And one other thing I also wanted to add is remind people on the call, if they missed it as well, that Rachel mentioned previously. WinRock and USAID are interested in supporting a training of trainers in Kenya. Groups that would be interested in sending trainers should contact Rachel after the webinar, and her email address is in the chat window. It was posted earlier.
Yeah. So there's
we have one question here. Go ahead, Anita.
Yeah, so that I think from Paula wanted to ask about the different ways to deliver. It really, Genevieve and I went through this quite a bit in terms of what's the best order, and I think we've come up from the pre-testing and a lot of the other evidence from the field that by starting with the business, it kind of anchors individuals and trains them in a way that they're most familiar, and then having the personal empowerment be a different type of training, but they've kind of gotten to know everyone. There's that more camaraderie in the group, and they're more open to be able to understand the concepts of empowerment. It's critical that the empowerment precede the leadership section, because the leadership builds so much upon what they've come up with in the empowerment section. So I think the business empowerment leadership sequence is the ideal sequence.
And question for you being available.
There's also the understand the impacts of the women's engagement and improve cook stove value chain.
Posting a link to book and the
Okay, I just wanted to address one of the questions that Fausto had asked. The data from the Kenya randomized controlled trial has been published in the Journal of Health Communications, and I'd be happy to share that, or I can pass it on to to Rachel and Chloe. They can put it on the website. But that's in a peer-reviewed journal that has all the details of that as well.
Thanks, Anita. And also there is on the Alliance website for the Kenya study, when you download the file, the first thing you see is the executive summary, and then I believe in the same attachment further down is the full study. So you should be able to access both the executive summary and the full study from the link on the website, and I'll go ahead and enter that link into the chat box.
Great.
Also, to answer the question about finding the full webinar online, we will be posting this to the Global Alliance for Clean Cook Stoves YouTube channel, which can be accessed from our website, or if you just do a quick Google search for Global Alliance YouTube, we'll have that up in the coming week if you missed any of the content or want to refresh. So we can stay on the line for a few minutes more. If any other questions come up, we'll be here to answer them. Otherwise, thank you all for joining. Our contact information is here. The recording will be posted shortly. And we hope you had a pleasurable experience today, and thanks for joining.
Yes, thanks so much.